Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another installment of MediaPost webinar series. I'm Mike Winkleman, Content Director for Bespoke by MediaPost, and we have a great presentation for all of you today, put together by our friends at Mountain. MediaPost webinars bring together the media, marketing, and advertising community to learn more about the methodologies and technologies that make effective business possible across a variety of categories, brought to you by our industry's top solutions providers, marketers, and practitioners. Leading today's webinar will be Ali Hayeri, Mountain's SVP of Marketing. With the new year approaching, Mountain has very cleverly and logically titled today's webinar Ad Lang Syne and focused it on the question of how 2024 will shake up media buying. As he reviews some of the CTV-oriented headlines that dominated the advertising and marketing press this past year, documenting the rush to ad-supported streaming, the adoption of new targeting and measurement capabilities, and an increase in ad inventory, Ali will provide you with actionable insights geared to helping you update your marketing strategies and build performance marketing campaigns that will drive long-lasting bottom-line results. Before we get started, just a reminder, after the presentation, we'll have some time for a Q&A session. You can submit your questions at any time during the presentation in the question box that you'll find on the GoToWebinar interface on your screen. With that, let's turn the presentation over to Ali. Ali?
Thanks so much, Mike. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everybody who's tuning in. We are huge fans of MediaPost. Really, I think what we're going to talk about today is just highly relevant to the folks at MediaPost. And at Mountain, we do a lot of webinars, but what we really prioritize with these webinars that we do is actually kind of producing content that's certainly fascinating, but actionable in some sort of way. One thing I should mention on that front is to check out Mountain Research. So if you go to research.mountain.com, that sort of validates a lot of that point there, in that it's a standalone research publication that we have. We have this privilege of being the sort of preeminent solution in CTV these days, and so we aggregate a lot of that data and publish primary research related to the happenings in the CTV advertising space. And so please make sure to check out Mountain Research. And also, again, that's kind of our bona fides there too. We do a lot of thought leadership and education in this space. And so just to dig in here for a second, this is me, of course. The only thing that I think is really kind of relevant about my background to this presentation is I'm one of you. The cool thing about working at a company like Mountain is that I'm marketing to marketers. And so I have this sort of dual position as being a marketer like you all, and wanting to understand everything that's going on in the advertising space, while also being a practitioner within this industry too. So that's an interesting position to kind of be in. Now, what we're going to talk about today is what media buying is going to look like over the course of next year. And what we'll do actually in doing so, what we'll start off with is kind of talking about how 2023 went for CTV. Spoiler, it went really well. And talk about some headlines that took place this year and use that as a way to really look forward to 2024 and make sense of what the best way to approach 2024 will be from a media buying standpoint as well. Digging right in, as I mentioned already, 2023 was a tremendous year for CTV. What we had seen in years prior, and maybe you all feel the same way too, is that in the years leading up to 2023, it felt like a lot of people were just kind of making sense of CTV. And they were making sense of it both between their own personal viewing habits, probably evolving to streaming from linear TV, and also professionally. There's just so much coverage related to the CTV space, and also consolidation happening in the ad tech world related to CTV as well. And so, until 2023, it felt like there was still a lot of people kind of making sense of it. This was the first year where it really felt like a really well-established lane in the advertising world, where everybody totally understood it, and a lot of people were actually doing it, which was really important as well too. We now see a lot of people are coming to Mountain. We're noticing now that a lot of them have already run a CTV campaign before in the past, so it's not wholly new to them as it had been before. Some things that were happening in the industry that I'm sure everybody sort of observed as well too is that Netflix and Disney Plus, the two biggest streaming platforms, both got comfortable with ads. And Amazon Prime, which is no slouch either from a streaming standpoint, also announced ad-supported streaming too. And so here's a great stat. Disney Plus says its ad tier will make up 88% of its subscriptions by 2028. That's crazy. And really what all of this kind of cumulatively means for advertisers is just a lot more inventory. When these biggest platforms buy into ad-supported with the huge reach that they already have in their subscriber base, that just means a lot more inventory available to advertisers. Some more points that kind of support that. One is we're seeing a lot of data related to consumers embracing ads to save money. There's a lot of coverage, including in media posts, about how we've kind of backed ourselves into financially the sort of cable bundle world all over again, just in terms of the cost of paid subscriptions in the streaming space. And it's sort of no surprise that a lot of these free ad-supported streaming platforms have been doing tremendously well. I think a lot of people are kind of tapping out a little bit in terms of subscribing to a litany of different streaming services. Another sort of interesting stat that supports all of this just generally beyond ad-supported versus paid is just next year 158 million US viewers, nearly half the country, will be streaming ad-supported content. That's seismic. We've been seeing a seismic sort of migration from linear to streaming already, but really it's kind of it's just undeniable at this point. And I suspect everybody who's tuned in here today is probably streaming TV rather than watching it in a linear format. Now, one thing that I mentioned just a moment ago is that as this migration has been happening and as these streaming platforms have been embracing ad-supported, that translates to more inventory. And advertisers certainly are loving it. For a while, until as CTV was kind of coming into form, really there was just two viable channels for a lot of advertisers in terms of performance marketing, and that was paid search and paid social. And what I think a lot of advertisers are now realizing is the opportunity that's in front of them is that this can be a proper third pillar to their whole advertising mix. And so, in some polling that we've seen, 76% of advertisers say CTV is significant to their campaigns. Makes sense. There's volume now because of all of this proliferation of ad-supported streaming. There's just a lot of inventory out there now that's converted into really kind of impactful ad placements for advertisers. Another interesting statistic, by 2024, 24% of brands expect CTV to represent 60 to 80% of their revenue. That is staggering. A year ago in that same survey, it was just 7%. And so that perception shift was tremendous over the course of a year. So advertisers certainly are seeing the value of this channel. Now, probably the biggest story in CTV in 2023 was Netflix. Now, Netflix sort of famously until late last year was just entirely subscription-based and kind of dismissed the idea of ad-supported offerings within Netflix. And it was interesting to see their transition happen. I think they had a bit of a learning curve with it. They obviously partnered with Microsoft to kind of get going pretty quickly, and everything was new for them. And from the advertiser perspective too, it felt like Netflix was kind of making sense of it all. One of the big observations that I think a lot of people had in this early go for Netflix was that ad prices were more expensive than people had sort of anticipated. And it makes sense. I mean, it's highly premium inventory in this case that was opened up just for the very first time to a pretty limited set of advertisers and for a limited set of placements as well. So it kind of makes sense that that it kind of played out the way that it did. And so, it was just, again, interesting to see Netflix kind of make that transition in front of us all. But, there's certainly a brighter future ahead of Netflix. It seems like this ad-supported tier has really taken off. There's some stats to really support this coming from Netflix's own earnings reportings. They definitely had they found an ability to kind of grow subscribers again, which was a challenge. This was also supported by the password sharing crackdown too, I should mention. But ad-supported subs grew the most, 70% since the last quarter, positioning them for 30% of all new subscribers signing up for some sort of ad-supported tier. I mean, that's tremendous. When you look at Netflix's reach compared to all of the other streaming platforms, 30% of that subscriber base opting in for ads. I mean, that's going to be really fascinating to see for advertisers as we kind of go forward. And this is one of the first sort of things that I want to mention to you all as advertisers as you're thinking about your advertising for next year is be mindful of Netflix. They're taking ad-supported incredibly seriously. Their CEO, in fact, recently mentioned that growing ad-supported memberships is their #1 priority. And number 2 to that is delivering features and products advertisers want. Again, since ad-supported is new to Netflix, there's a little bit of catch-up that they needed to do in terms of the reporting that advertisers are sort of used to. But I think that the thing that makes me most excited as an advertiser thinking about Netflix ads is just the potential for some real ingenuity from an ad unit standpoint. We know so much about the pedigree of Netflix's engineering, certainly from like an infrastructural standpoint, it's tremendously impressive what they do. But really kind of deploying all of the brilliance from an engineering and product standpoint towards ad units. I'm really kind of interested in seeing what kind of interesting ad units they're going to have available to them. In terms of features of ads that are more familiar to everybody, one thing that they're actively working on is launching the ability to kind of showcase QR codes in the ad creative, and just a lot related to measurement and audience targeting. So it makes sense. And what you'll probably notice too is just they're investing in their ad sales teams as well. They really are growing that quite a bit, which again is a new function for the business, but they now have a year under their belt of kind of supporting that. So it's going to be interesting to see how Netflix progresses next year, but really as that inventory just continues to grow and those ad placements continue to grow, I mean, I think this is going to be a tremendous channel for a lot of people to utilize in the new year. Now, another thing to kind of talk about, and it's something that we've certainly observed as consumers this year as well, has been just the fragmentation that has been happening in the world of streaming. And really, the idea of fragmentation, it's frustrating for consumers, but if you just kind of look at it objectively, it does show that the space is maturing. For it to be big enough to actually fragment, it does show that the growth has been continuous in that sense. Now, thinking about this fragmentation as an advertiser is really important because there's not any single one-stop shop for you to spend all of your dollars. I think in the case of search, this might be a controversial thing to say, but I think most people think of Google when it comes to paid search. There's no equivalent to Google and paid search in the case of streaming. There's just a lot of different places where you can choose to actually spend your advertising money in the case of across these different sort of streaming providers. And so it can be hard to kind of like standardize your campaigns. You're dealing with a couple of different walled gardens and then programmatic advertising that sort of runs across a lot of different other sort of publishers. And also from a measurement standpoint too, this can be a challenge for a lot of advertisers, being able to try to measure things efficiently across all of these different placements. And so one thing that we kind of certainly preach, just by nature of the solution that we kind of put out to market, but I think it's kind of validated in terms of the results that people see, is really look for a CTV platform that's going to give you the biggest reach possible, that's going to span across the most publishers possible, across all of these different sort of streaming options that the end users actually have. And private marketplace deals certainly are going to be even more crucial. So a little bit on that point, as you see this seismic shift that's already happened and it still is happening over to streaming, and as you're seeing all of these advertisers and their demand for streaming TV inventory is growing, what that's going to do is it's going to make getting these premium placements difficult, because the demand is massively outstripping the actual supply that's available. And so really private marketplace deals, if you have the means to do so, which most people don't, but if you do have the means to do so, it's definitely to your benefit to kind of cut a deal with networks to try to get some sort of premium pricing, or at least moving up in the waterfall so you can actually have a look at this premium inventory. But in the open market, it's going to be really difficult to get really effective placements. One other sort of observation from Mountain's own experience of just kind of operating a platform is, at Mountain, we're constantly talking about CTV as a performance marketing channel. We call it performance TV. And part of the makeup of that is premium inventory. So, getting your ads on ESPN and Peacock and all of these like really well-known publishers. It's not a marketing spin thing that we're doing there. I'm telling you that as the marketer at the company. We're not highlighting all those premium networks just because you're familiar with them. We're highlighting it because we've learned this over the time of actually operating a streaming TV advertising platform. The performance comes from the really premium networks. There's solutions out there where you're going to get like remnant inventory, or maybe you're going to get placements on really obscure, ad-supported streaming apps. You're not going to get performance from those. Really, unsurprisingly, the real performance is derived from really premium publishers. And so, whether you use Mountain or some other platform, whatever it is, it's those premium network placements that are going to be the most impactful placements that you're going to get as an advertiser. So kind of plan accordingly there. Now, programmatic obviously has sort of transformed how we understand the impact of streaming TV advertising. And it's kind of changed the rules around how we think about TV advertising just fundamentally, and I think the thing that is most transformative about programmatic TV versus linear TV is audience targeting. Being able to show up and have a very clear idea of who your target audience is, and being able to run TV ads against that target audience is just tremendous, as opposed to the alternative on linear TV, which is it's really hard. It's either you're going to pay a lot of money for a high visibility placement that's just a shotgun approach, or you're talking about something that's going to be really narrow. And in both cases, you're just looking for overlap with your target audience. It's never going to be precise, as opposed to streaming, where it's far more high fidelity, because it's the same approach as paid social, experientially. If you haven't run a CTV campaign before, it's very similar to the sort of components that you need to launch a paid social campaign. And so one thing that I want to kind of mention is, now being several years into this like streaming TV advertising world, it's never been easier for an advertiser to run TV campaigns at scale. And I'll speak to this through the lens of Mountain because that's what I know best. But you could certainly apply this to any other solution that may sort of fit the same criteria. First of all, a platform that just has a lot of a really strong engine under the hood, so to speak, that is going to allow you to not have to kind of groom and feed a campaign on an ongoing basis. In our case, our underlying technology that is doing the media buying, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of optimizations to your campaign a day. Obviously, something that's not feasible for someone to do or even think about. But the impact of that is tremendous, because really what you're trying to do is get the most impactful ad placements as possible. And there's so many variables that go into identifying what the most impactful ad placement is going to be. There's so many variables to be thinking about in determining that. And so really, I think we've gotten to a point where the inventory is so vast and the demand is so great and so competitive that you kind of have to have some sort of technology kind of doing this work for you at scale, to really make the most impact with your CTV advertising campaign. And so that's what we've been seeing. It's tremendous comfort from performance marketers coming to platforms like Mountain and running CTV campaigns as they would any other performance marketing campaign. They're really thinking about it in that sense. And so just to use some performance marketing metrics to kind of grade the work of a CTV platform like Mountain. Recently, we kind of deployed something called Next Gen TV, which is our big update in time for the high stakes sort of time of year of holiday advertising, where we made a lot of performance optimizations for the Mountain platform, knowing that our advertisers are really actively trying to drive sales and site visits. And it's been incredible to see with this newest release of Next Gen TV that went live a couple of weeks ago. Our advertisers have been seeing a 27% reduction in cost per acquisition and a 38% increase in visit rate on their sites. And so it's, again, this is the sort of stuff that you can see from an engineering-led performance marketing platform. And this kind of speaks to that perception shift again. When you're talking about streaming TV advertising, really there's huge upside with it being a performance marketing channel for you. So you should kind of have performance marketing expectations out of any sort of streaming advertising channel that you're using. So if you're a heavy duty performance marketing shop that's doing tons of advertising in paid search and paid social, a platform like Mountain certainly is going to speak to you, because we kind of speak the language of performance marketing. And so we like performance marketers coming to the platform and having performance marketing expectations out of this channel. And again, the point here too is just that don't relegate CTV to being a brand awareness channel just because that's your understanding of linear TV advertising and you're carrying it over. It can and should be a performance marketing channel for you. And so just some other stuff related to what we're seeing in the case of performance TV. It's continuing to grow as a performance marketing channel. So along that same point, the last point that I made of bringing performance marketing expectations to a streaming TV advertising platform, that also means, measurement. So, platform like Mountain integrated with Google Analytics. A lot of performance marketers are relying on Google Analytics to sort of standardize all of the data collection across all of the different advertising platforms that they're running that are driving visits to their website. And so, that's tremendously important. Another sort of big update for us recently too has been, it's happening as we speak, is the measurement of app installs. So many of our advertisers are actually, their objective is to get people to install their app or drive conversions within an app. And that's been a recent development with the Mountain platform as well. And so integrations with companies like AppsFlyer, Adjust, Coachava, Rockerbox, these measurement partners are really helping our advertisers really have like a complete look into the efficiency of their campaigns, either in terms of driving mobile, again, app installs, or some sort of activity that's happening inside the app as well. And finally, I want to talk about pricing for a second too. I kind of mentioned this earlier before, but private marketplace deals are going to become tremendously important, or they already are. They're going to continue being of tremendous importance as we kind of move forward with higher and higher demand for finite CTV inventory. Now that CTV inventory is certainly growing as all of these ad-supported solutions are growing as well, but the demand is always going to outpace that supply. And so being able to get preferential pricing and moving up in like the priority list or the waterfall is just going to be tremendously important for advertisers to actually utilize the really premium inventory that's demonstrated, the ability to convert for users. And so, in the case of Mountain, this is one of the big reasons why advertisers choose to work with Mountain is that we have collective buying power. We are now one of the largest TV advertising buyers, inventory buyers in the country. And we're able to kind of negotiate and use our buying power on behalf of all of our advertisers. And what that translates to is campaigns that are running on the Mountain platform, they're getting a lot of our whole platform, I should mention, is just constrained to premium inventory sources. And this allows all of our advertisers to get a lot of placements on these really premium networks that if they took that same budget and used a DSP and tried to get placements on the open market for those publishers, they just barely would be able to break through. And so a lot of advertisers are taking advantage of Mountain's buying power on behalf of everyone to be able to actually get these really strong placements for advertisers. So it's been great to see, especially these upstart brands. We have a lot of direct-to-consumer sort of upstart brands that are thriving with paid social advertising, and it's been great to see them use Mountain as their first foray into TV advertising, and they're getting really premium placements because of the inventory and the direct deals that Mountain has. It's just been great for their brands to see that. I said one last thing before, but I realized I wanted to talk about creative as well. One thing that we observe is creative can be something that holds back a lot of brands from really taking the plunge into connected television. And it makes sense, I think for a lot of people, their instinct is to repurpose some sort of existing video creative that they may be running on paid social. And in some instances, that can work. So if you can do it and it fits the format and it also fits the specifications, the minimum specs for running a CTV creative is far higher than paid social for obvious reasons because it's going to be placed on a large high-res TV. So if you can do that and you can fit it into a 15 or 30-second spot, then you're off to the races. But for a lot of advertisers, even if they have the creative that's ready to go, one thing that sort of surprises them about running CTV campaigns, and this is something that we've observed and published reporting on, is that creative needs to be turned over, frequently. And it's relative what that frequency is based off of how much you're spending in your campaigns. But I would say at worst, you should be turning over that creative on a quarterly basis. And for some advertisers, it's just they really aren't set up to produce TV quality creative at that frequency. And so conveniently, because we've sort of encountered this problem on the part of our advertisers quite a bit, we put together a service called Creative as a Subscription, which is a really cool service that advertisers really love. Really what that does is in exchange for a commitment of media spend, over the course of a year, on a quarterly basis, we will supply the advertisers with ongoing creative. Mountain over the years has made some really key acquisitions in terms of being able to produce TV creative, and so we kind of deploy those resources that we have, and we're able to let advertisers just kind of spend their dollars on media, which is going to be most impactful sort of investment in their campaign. And then in turn, we can help them actually get creative on an ongoing basis. And the advertiser is part of the process. It's real creators that are actually working on this creative. Real creative briefs are exchanged and iterations are made. It's not some auto-generated asset. It's actually really impressive creative. And in fact, one of our clients, Rumple, who I highly recommend you check out. It's holiday season too, so could be a great gift. But Rumple actually is a CAS customer, CAS as we call it, Creative as a Subscription. They generated an extra, 526,000 in revenue by being in the CAS program, meaning they were able to just focus all of their investment on their campaign, the media in their campaign. And we were able to kind of supply them with creative on an ongoing basis to make sure that the campaign had new creative that just continued to help people convert. So with that, just want to kind of tie things up together for you all with some takeaways. Again, the advertising landscape has been completely changed with this migration of TV advertising to streaming, and now solidly right up there with paid search and paid social as the big advertising channel with a lot of volume and the potential of converting a lot of users. Netflix, as we kind of talked about, has been tremendously sort of successful as the year went on, I should say, with this new approach towards ad-supported. And as they've kind of told us, that's going to be their big area of focus going forward, because it seems like almost a third of their subscriber base is going to be on the ad-supported version of the service. And then in terms of media buying considerations in the new year, one is, again, diversification, making sure that you are getting placements across as many publishers and making sure that those publishers are high quality. That's going to be what's most impactful for you as an advertiser, as opposed to putting your eggs all in one basket of one walled garden. I wouldn't recommend that. And also, to that same point too, in terms of the technology that you're using to do these CTV campaigns, it's best to invest in platforms that, again, span across a lot of publishers and premium inventory, but also have a lot of underlying technology that's just optimized towards efficiency. And certainly MNTN has been that choice for a lot of marketers for a couple of years now. But with that, I think we'll turn it over to Q&A. So Mike, if you want to jump back in here.
Okay, thank you, Ali. That was great. We have time for a few questions from the audience. During the Q&A session, feel free to keep putting your questions into the question box on the side panel. Also, a quick reminder, you'll get a recording of the webinar as well as a copy of the deck at some point tomorrow morning. Now let's get to these audience questions. First of all, you touched on service consolidation. What do you think the streaming landscape will look like by this time next year?
Yeah, I think we're kind of seeing it. It's not even so much me using a crystal ball. I think we're kind of seeing it play out right now. Two things. One is obviously consolidation. We're seeing headlines related to some pretty big subscription services that are looking to maybe get merged into other ones, or marquee brand names in the subscription space that are also going to be sunset. So I think that there's plenty of coverage related to that. Another thing that I kind of observed too that was really fascinating is the delivery of streaming TV is also going to evolve. I read an article yesterday about, I don't know if it's official or not, or if it's kind of speculated, but Max is going to be offering all of its content through YouTube. So users can subscribe through YouTube and consume all of the content through YouTube. And I think that's fascinating. It'll be interesting to see how these streaming platforms sort of adapt to user behavior over the course of the year as well. But I think that beyond the consolidation stuff, we're going to narrow certainly to like 3 or 4 major subscription services, and then from there, seeing how they differentiate from one another is going to be really fascinating. And specifically, a strong ad-supported Netflix and a Hulu bundle to Disney Plus going head to head. It's going to be really fascinating, both as a consumer and as an advertiser.
Okay, so another forecasting question here. What do you think the conversation around ad measurement will look like by this time next year? And what methods do you think will be most effective for advertisers looking to justify their budgets and prove ROI?
Yeah, this goes back to that point that I'm kind of belaboring now of treating CTV as a performance marketing channel. As long as you're commingling some sort of linear TV inventory with your streaming TV campaigns, you're going to be muddying your reporting and you're going to be making it more abstract. And the very aspects of linear TV advertising measurement that we want to avoid, you'll be sort of reintroducing. And so it's definitely in everybody's benefit to be using CTV platforms that sort of operate as performance marketing platforms, because the world of performance marketing measurement is really mature, and it can be extended to CTV as well. And so, I remember as a performance marketer, how blown away I was the first time I saw a Mountain report that reported on site visits and site conversions attributed to a TV campaign. For the first time I started seeing CTV site visits appear inside Google Analytics. And so there's certainly a potential for really, really detailed reporting for CTV campaigns, but it's contingent upon the advertiser to be using a platform that has that capability of delivering that type of measurement.
Okay. Do brands need brand awareness to reach higher levels of success in performance marketing? Would a brand like Keeps or Hims see significantly better results on CTV than would an upstart D2C brand that is similarly situated to offering and positioning?
I think both apply conveniently. I think both instances work nicely. I think on the D2C front, the CTV ad unit, like social, is just really conducive to introducing a new product, a new service, a new product category, because it's obviously visual, and also the targeting of it is incredibly effective too. So as long as you have a really clear target audience that you want to hit and really good creative that really shows off how that product or service actually works, D2C brands, totally. This is why they're thriving. They already are thriving with CTV. We're certainly seeing it on our platform as well. One shout out I'll give is to a product called One Wheel. It's a very, very cool product for people who are into skateboarding or any other sort of transportation like that. I don't know what the product category is formally called, but it's like a skateboard. And they have great creative, and when you watch the creative, it's incredibly compelling what it is. And so they're really thriving on CTV because they have great creative that shows off how the product works, and they're able to target their audiences. They know exactly who they want to see their ads. And in our case, Mountain is sort of matching their sort of perfect customer with their creative. And so D2C brands are certainly thriving. On the other side of it, the really sort of well-established ones, I mean, that certainly works well too. You already have the brand awareness. One thought that I kind of give to my marketing friends who work at companies like Hims is, even if your objective is brand marketing, say I'm talking to a brand marketer, there's no excuse not to be using a performance marketing channel or a performance marketing approach towards your TV advertising, even if you're a brand marketer. Because of the last question, all the measurement that you're going to be getting on the back end of your campaign, that can unlock a ton of creativity for a brand marketer to be able to know precisely what the impact of their campaign was, what the reach was, who saw it, that can have tremendous influence on creative decisions. So even if you're a brand marketer working towards some sort of brand awareness objective, it still behooves you to use some sort of performance marketing sort of optimized platform because of, again, the ability to target in a fine-grained way, and also the measurement that's going to unlock some creative ideas for you down the line too.
Okay. This audience member writes, I have to admit, we haven't advertised a lot on CTV yet. Hearing all this talk about evolution and advertisers familiarizing themselves with the channel over years has me feeling like I missed the boat. Do you have any advice for someone who's jumping in late?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to deliver like a really impartial answer so I could retain my credibility with the audience, but I really just gotta say that probably a platform like MNTN makes the most sense for an advertiser like that, because there's really not a whole lot of thinking that you need to do beyond just producing the best possible creative you can. You don't really, with a platform like MNTN, you don't need to worry about twisting a lot of knobs and doing a lot of manual work to deploy your campaign. Really, it's showing up with an understanding of who your target audience is, choosing your audience, and also having really good creative. And the marketer who's kind of asking that, they certainly know who their target audience is, and they're certainly capable of putting together a really good asset. That's really all you need to kind of show up to this platform and start advertising at scale. So you're far more well positioned than you probably think, at least with a platform like this.
All this talk about new tech is great, but what about brands that are struggling to keep up with the demands of ad creative? Do you have any tips?
Yeah, so definitely all the creative as a subscription stuff that I mentioned, that makes a whole lot of sense for advertisers. But I'll give a shout out to QuickFrame. QuickFrame is a company that MNTN acquired almost 2 years ago now, and QuickFrame is tremendous. It's something that I wish I had available to me in my previous marketing stints, because this can be a really difficult thing. Because for a lot of marketers, producing creative means contracting with a creative agency and going through a very expensive and drawn out process to produce one asset. And understandably, especially marketers in like a leaner operation, that's even producing the one might be too much. No less, kind of thinking about doing that on an ongoing basis. So what QuickFrame is, it's a marketplace where it matches anybody who has any sort of video need with a wide variety of creators all over the world. These are real people. And it spans, motion graphics artists, video editors, full-blown directors, someone who will direct a full commercial shoot for you. You can also do that on QuickFrame. And so in some instances, it could be as simple as pooling together some assets and getting a editor from QuickFrame to just stitch it all together to spec a CTV ad for you. In other instances, it's going through the proper creative brief process, which QuickFrame facilitates, of kind of handing over your brand guidelines and your assets, while also getting an actual like pitch going on what your creative should be. All of it's tremendously cost effective, tremendously, especially if, again, you're just doing something as simple as getting some assets edited for you. And so I would highly recommend for the marketers out there that are trying to be as lean as possible, but procure these assets to check out QuickFrame. That'll probably be the most impactful thing you do from a creative standpoint. And by the way, like that, you can use QuickFrame for non-advertising needs too. So if you're a product marketer and you need product videos, you can use QuickFrame to develop those. We have HR teams that use QuickFrame to develop training videos. So really, like any video use case can be met with QuickFrame. But certainly in this case, part of the reason why MNTN acquired QuickFrame is because, again, we saw this exact sort of need come up from a lot of our customers where they got excited about the CTV opportunity, but just didn't know how they can actually produce creative to take advantage of it. And QuickFrame can certainly meet that need.
Okay. Here's a different but very important question. How can I ensure that the CTV inventory I'm buying is safe from ad fraud?
Yeah, I mean, really the easy answer there is to just use a platform that's constraining the inventory to just premium placements. This is another sort of like convenient talking point for Mountain, but maybe uncomfortable one for other TV advertising platforms because in Mountain's case, we just serve on top tier publishers. So and so by extension, if the pool of your delivery is going to be Peacock and CNN and ESPN and ABC, it meets the needs of all advertisers from a brand awareness standpoint. So we don't actually have to deal with a lot of concerns related to this. That being said, there are certainly configurations that you can make to sort of block list specific publishers. If you know categorically you don't want a publisher to appear in the delivery of your campaign, you could certainly do that on a network by network basis. But we fortunately don't have to deal with that a lot with Mountain just because of the range of publishers that we're working with. Already, the content is such that it's not really an issue from a brand safety standpoint. But I would say if you're doing sort of open market CTV advertising or you're working with a platform that allows your delivery to just sort of hit virtually anything. I mean, from like an ad fraud standpoint, that's where that stuff can be pretty bad. We've seen instances of CTV ad fraud before, not at Mountain, but as an industry, we've seen that happen a couple of times now, where bad actors are spinning up these like streaming TV apps and using those as magnets for bid requests, and it's been bad. So it's certainly possible in this space. Fortunately, at Mountain, it's just it's a clear-cut set of really premium publishers that make our advertisers feel quite comfortable.
Okay. And here's a particularly current question. How does AI impact Mountain?
So in a variety of ways. One is in the sort of underlying media buying engine. So as I mentioned before, there's so many variables, and I think the number is around 650,000 optimizations happen in one day for a single campaign. And to be able to do that, there's underlying AI technology that's evaluating all of these different variables continuously, and also sort of triangulating, bid requests with a huge shopper graph and device graph that Mountain kind of maintains that contains over half of the households in the United States are on that graph. And so doing all of this stuff continuously is using a lot of AI technology to make that happen. And then also just AI technology, even on the creative side. Something that we announced a couple of months ago that we'll be launching next year is a tool that utilizes AI technology to help produce TV creative. So we're talking here still about, we're still talking about platforms like QuickFrame, where real humans are going to be making your creative, and I highly recommend that, certainly. But we are building tools that are allowing advertisers to be really self-sufficient and just kind of generate based off of an idea, a full-blown 30-second TV spot. And that's utilizing a lot of AI integrations with companies that everyone knows, like OpenAI. And so that's something I would say stay tuned on. That's tremendously exciting to see the possibilities there. But just to make this thing work, there's a lot of AI kind of deployed under the hood.
Okay. So before we wrap up, in thinking through everything you've talked about over the last 45 minutes and questions you've answered and so forth, are there any final thoughts you want to leave the audience with today?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of relates to one of the questions that kind of came through, but you haven't missed the boat yet. If you haven't done it before, at Mountain, about 2/3 of our advertisers have never advertised on TV before. And we're proud of that. We're proud of the fact that we've found a way to make TV more accessible. And really the reasoning for that is because we managed to make TV a performance marketing channel. And that's what's giving marketers the comfort of spending their first TV advertising dollars with us, because they see the reporting's familiar to them, the terminology is familiar to them, the performance of actually driving real conversions is familiar to them. They have that high expectation. And so you're definitely not missing the boat. And so if you're looking to kind of take the plunge, this is certainly the best place to do it.
Okay. So I think with that, we'll wrap up for today. One thing I wanted to mention, if you asked a question and it didn't get answered, don't worry. Folks at Mountain have received all your questions and they can respond to each of you directly after the end of the webinar. Thanks again to Ali for the great presentation and for the audience to some great questions. Thanks to everybody behind the scenes at Mountain who helped to put all of this together. We hope everyone in the audience found the information helpful and informative. And remember, you'll get a copy of today's webinar as well as a deck in your email box tomorrow. Stay tuned to MediaPost's website and digital publications in your inbox for more informative webinars to come from other valuable MediaPost partners in the weeks and months to come. Thanks so much to everybody for joining us today. We'll see you next time and stay safe out there. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Take care.